Wife cheated with my best friend while I was deployed. The welcome home video I made for the whole base was epic. Deployment was supposed to be the hardest part of my marriage, but it turned out coming home would be what broke me completely. 8 months overseas, counting down every single day until I could hold my wife again, only to discover she'd been holding someone else the entire time. Someone I trusted more than anyone else in the world. The signs were all there during our video calls, but I was too blind to see them. She'd gotten a new haircut, started wearing makeup more often, always seemed distracted when we talked. Her responses became shorter, less enthusiastic. The woman who used to light up when my name appeared on her phone suddenly seemed annoyed by my calls. I told myself it was just the stress of being apart, that she was dealing with loneliness in her own way. My buddy had been checking on her regularly, just like we'd arranged before I left. He'd send me updates about how she was doing, always reassuring me that she was fine, that he was taking good care of her. The irony of those words still makes my stomach turn. He was taking care of her all right, just not in the way I'd imagined. The other guys in my unit started acting weird around me about 6 months in. Conversations would stop when I walked into a room. People would give me these pitying looks that I couldn't understand. I figured they were just worried about me being away from home for so long, maybe concerned about how I was handling the separation. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine they knew something I didn't. 3 weeks before I was scheduled to return, my sister called me at 2 a.m. her time. She was crying so hard I could barely understand what she was saying. She'd seen them together at the grocery store, holding hands, kissing in the parking lot like they were teenagers. My wife and my best friend since high school, the guy who'd been my best man at our wedding, the person I'd trusted with my life more times than I could count. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. I actually doubled over and vomited right there in the barracks bathroom. 8 months of missing her, of looking at her picture every night before bed, of planning our reunion down to the smallest detail. All of it was a lie. While I was serving my country, thinking about her constantly, she was building a whole new life with someone else. I didn't sleep for the next 3 days. My commanding officer noticed I was falling apart and pulled me aside for a conversation. I told him everything, expecting sympathy, maybe some advice about how to handle the situation. Instead, he surprised me with a different kind of support. He told me that half the base already knew what was happening. That word had gotten back through various channels months ago. Everyone had been walking on eggshells around me, not knowing how to break the news. That's when the anger really set in. Not just at my wife and my former best friend, but at everyone who'd kept this secret from me. I felt like the biggest fool in the world, the clueless husband who was the last to know about his own wife's affair. The humiliation was almost worse than the heartbreak. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of wallowing in self-pity, I started getting creative. The wheels in my head began turning, and I realized I had an opportunity here. They thought they were so clever, carrying on behind my back while I was thousands of miles away. They had no idea that I knew, no idea that their little secret was about to become very public. I started planning my revenge with military precision. First, I needed evidence. I asked my sister to do some reconnaissance for me, to document what she could without being obvious about it. She was initially hesitant, worried about me doing something I'd regret later. But when I explained my plan, she got on board immediately. The photos she managed to get were perfect. Them having dinner at what used to be our favorite restaurant. Walking hand in hand through the park where I'd proposed. Him leaving our house early in the morning, still in yesterday's clothes. My wife had even changed her relationship status on social media, though she'd blocked me from seeing it. She wasn't trying very hard to hide their relationship from everyone else, just from me. Next, I needed to figure out the timing. My homecoming was going to be a big event, with most of the base families there to welcome us back. There would be media coverage, ceremonies, the whole 9 yards. It was going to be the perfect stage for my little production. I spent hours crafting the perfect video. It started out like any other homecoming tribute, with pictures of me and my wife from happier times. Our wedding day, vacations we'd taken together, casual moments around the house. Sweet music, romantic captions, everything you'd expect from a loving husband who'd been away for 8 months. But then the tone started to shift. The photos became more recent, showing my wife with increasingly shorter hair, different clothes, a glow in her eyes that I hadn't seen in our pictures together for years. Then came the first photo of them together, subtle at first. Just two people who happened to be in the same frame at some community event. The progression was beautiful in its simplicity. Gradually, the photos told the story of their relationship developing, standing closer together at various gatherings, his hand on her back in group photos, the two of them laughing at some private joke while others around them looked uncomfortable. Then came the money shots. The surveillance photos my sister had taken, showing them in clearly romantic situations. The coup de grace was a screenshot of her changed relationship status, along with posts on her social media about how happy she was with her new life. Posts that were visible to everyone except me since I was blocked. The video ended with a simple message: "Thanks for keeping my wife company while I was defending our country. I hope you both got what you deserved." No profanity, no threats, just a calm acknowledgement of the situation with a slight edge that anyone watching would pick up on. I uploaded the video to every social media platform I could think of, scheduled to go live exactly 1 hour before my flight landed. I tagged everyone I knew who would be at the homecoming ceremony, plus a few local news stations that always covered these events. I wanted maximum exposure for my masterpiece. The flight home was the longest of my life. I kept checking the time, knowing that right around the moment we started our descent, my little movie would be broadcasting to the world. I wondered if she'd seen it yet, if she was panicking, if she was trying to figure out how to explain herself. When we landed, I could immediately tell something was different. The guys from my unit were looking at me with a mixture of respect and amusement. A few of them actually applauded when I walked off the plane. Word had clearly got around about what I'd done. The homecoming ceremony was surreal. Families were reuniting all around me, tears of joy, passionate kisses, children running to their parents. And there I was, scanning the crowd for a wife who I knew wouldn't be there. She wasn't, of course. Neither was he. But plenty of other people were, and they were all looking at me with expressions ranging from sympathy to admiration. My sister was there, beaming with pride. She rushed over and hugged me tight, whispering in my ear that the video had already been viewed thousands of times and was being shared across multiple platforms. Local news stations had picked it up, and it was starting to go viral nationally. The base commander himself came over to shake my hand. He didn't say much, just nodded approvingly and patted me on the back. Later, I found out that he'd been dealing with similar situations for years and was impressed by how I'd handled mine. Apparently, most guys in my position either fell apart completely or did something that got them in serious trouble. I went home to an empty house, which was exactly what I'd expected. She'd cleared out most of her stuff, leaving behind just the furniture and some of the wedding gifts we'd received. There was no note, no explanation, no apology. Just empty closets and bathroom cabinets like she'd never existed. But the silence didn't last long. My phone started ringing almost immediately. Friends and family who'd seen the video, offering support and congratulations. Reporters wanting to interview me about my story. Even a few producers from daytime talk shows, wanting to know if I'd be interested in appearing on their programs. The local news picked up the story that evening. They interviewed some of the people who'd been at the homecoming ceremony, asking about their reactions to the situation. The consensus seemed to be that I'd handled things with class and dignity, that I'd exposed the truth without resorting to violence or public tantrums. Social media exploded over the next few days. The video was shared thousands of times, with comments ranging from supportive to outraged on my behalf. People were calling me everything from a hero to a genius. Some criticized me for airing my dirty laundry in public, but they were vastly outnumbered by those who applauded my approach. The most surprising reaction came from other military spouses who'd been through similar situations. They started reaching out to me, sharing their own stories of infidelity and betrayal. Apparently, this kind of thing was more common than I'd realized, and many of them wished they'd had the courage to expose their cheating partners the way I had. My former best friend tried to reach out after a few days, sending text messages that I didn't bother reading. I blocked his number and all his social media accounts. As far as I was concerned, he'd ceased to exist the moment he decided to betray our friendship. Some boundaries once crossed can never be uncrossed. My wife made one attempt at contact, showing up at the house about a week after I got back. I watched her through the window as she stood on the porch, clearly debating whether to ring the doorbell. Eventually, she left without making contact. I found a letter in my mailbox later that day, but I threw it away without reading it. Whatever she had to say was about 8 months too late. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly straightforward. She didn't fight me on anything, probably because she knew she had no leg to stand on. With the evidence I'd gathered and the public nature of her affair, her attorney advised her to just accept whatever terms I offered. I wasn't vindictive in the settlement, just fair. I kept the house and most of our savings, while she got her car and her personal belongings. The most interesting development came about a month later. I started getting messages from women who'd seen the video and wanted to meet me. Apparently, my story had resonated with a lot of people who'd been through similar betrayals. They saw me as someone who'd handled a terrible situation with dignity and strength. I wasn't ready for dating, not by a long shot. The wounds were still too fresh, the trust issues too deep. But it was nice to know that when I was ready, there would be options. The video had inadvertently become a dating profile of sorts, showing potential partners exactly what kind of man I was and how I handled adversity. The base became a much more comfortable place to be. Instead of the pitying looks I'd been getting before, people now looked at me with respect. I'd become something of a legend, the guy who turned his personal tragedy into a masterpiece of revenge. Other service members started coming to me for advice about their own relationship problems. I threw myself into my work with renewed focus. The anger and hurt were still there, but they'd transformed into something more productive. I started volunteering for extra assignments, pushing myself harder than ever before. Physical training became my therapy, and I found myself in better shape than I'd been in years. The most unexpected consequence of the whole situation was how it changed my relationship with my family. My parents had never really understood my ex-wife, always feeling like she was a bit shallow and selfish. They'd never said anything while we were married, but now they felt free to express their true feelings. Turns out they'd been worried about her faithfulness from the beginning. My sister became my closest confidant during this period. She'd been the one to break the news to me, and she felt responsible for my pain. I had to keep reassuring her that she'd done the right thing, that I was grateful she'd told me the truth instead of letting me come home to an even worse surprise. The video continued to gain traction for weeks after I posted it. It was featured on several websites that specialized in revenge stories, and it spawned countless copycat videos from other betrayed spouses. I'd apparently started a trend of creative public exposures of infidelity. But the real satisfaction came from the knowledge that I'd handled the situation exactly the way I wanted to. I hadn't lost my temper, hadn't done anything violent or illegal, hadn't made myself look like the bad guy. I'd simply told the truth in a creative and public way, letting the evidence speak for itself. The hardest part was dealing with the loneliness. 8 months of deployment had been difficult, but at least then, I'd had the comfort of knowing I had someone waiting for me at home. Now I was truly alone, starting over at an age when I'd expected to be settled and secure in my marriage. Some nights, I'd lie in bed thinking about all the plans we'd made together that would never happen. The house we'd talked about buying, the kids we'd planned to have, the retirement we'd imagined spending together. All of it was gone, replaced by uncertainty and the need to rebuild my entire life from scratch. But there were also moments of unexpected joy. The freedom to make decisions without considering someone else's feelings. The ability to spend my money however I wanted. The possibility of finding someone who would truly appreciate and respect me, instead of someone who would betray me the moment I wasn't around to watch. The legal proceedings dragged on for months, but I barely paid attention to them. My attorney handled everything while I focused on moving forward with my life. The financial settlement was fair, leaving me with enough assets to start fresh without being vindictive. I wanted to be done with both of them, not tied to them through ongoing financial disputes. One of the most interesting developments was how the story affected my former best friend's life. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that he'd lost several other friendships over the affair. People we'd all grown up with had taken sides, and most of them had chosen mine. His family was apparently furious with him, and his reputation in our hometown was permanently damaged. I felt a certain satisfaction knowing that actions had consequences, but I also felt a deep sadness for the friendship we'd lost. We'd been through so much together growing up, had shared so many important moments. All of that history was erased by his decision to betray me in the worst possible way. The most surprising twist came about 6 months after my return. I was contacted by a documentary filmmaker who wanted to make a film about military families dealing with infidelity. My story had become something of a case study in how to handle betrayal with dignity, and she wanted to feature it prominently in her project. I was initially hesitant to participate, worried about reopening old wounds or appearing to exploit my situation for personal gain. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that sharing my story might help other people going through similar situations. If my experience could help even one person handle their own betrayal with more grace and less destructive anger, it would be worth the discomfort. The documentary process was therapeutic in ways I hadn't expected. Talking about the situation with professional interviewers forced me to process my emotions more deeply than I'd been able to do on my own. I found myself gaining new insights into what had happened and why it had affected me so profoundly. By the time the documentary was completed, I felt like I'd truly moved on from the situation. The anger had faded, replaced by a sense of closure and even some gratitude. The betrayal had been devastating, but it had also freed me from a marriage that clearly wasn't as strong as I'd believed. It had shown me what I was capable of when pushed to my limits. The film premiered at several festivals and was eventually picked up by a streaming service. It won awards for its honest portrayal of military life and the unique challenges faced by service members and their families. I was proud to be part of something that might make a positive difference in other people's lives. Looking back on the whole experience, I realized that the video was just the beginning of my healing process, not the end of it. The public revenge had been satisfying in the moment, but the real work of rebuilding my life happened gradually over the months and years that followed. I learned to trust again, to love again, to believe in the possibility of lasting happiness. The story of my homecoming video became a part of military folklore, passed down from one generation of service members to the next. It served as both a cautionary tale about the importance of loyalty and a reminder that betrayal, while painful, doesn't have to be the end of the story. Sometimes it's just the beginning of a better chapter. Years later, when I finally did find love again, it was with someone who understood the depth of the betrayal I'd experienced and respected the strength it had taken to overcome it. She'd seen the video before we met, and instead of being intimidated by it, she was impressed by the way I'd handled such a difficult situation. She saw it as evidence of my character, not as baggage from my past. The house that had once felt empty and haunted by memories became a home again. The rooms that had echoed with loneliness were filled with laughter and new memories. The pain that had once consumed me became just another part of my story, no longer defining me, but having shaped me into someone stronger and wiser. I never regretted making that video. It had been exactly what I needed to do at that moment in my life, the perfect way to reclaim my power and dignity in a situation where I'd felt utterly powerless. It had given me closure, vindication, and the satisfaction of knowing that I'd handled the worst betrayal of my life with creativity and grace. The experience taught me that sometimes the best revenge really is living well, but that there's nothing wrong with making sure everyone knows exactly why you're living so much better without the people who betrayed you. The video had been my way of closing one chapter of my life and opening another, and I couldn't have asked for a more perfect ending to such a painful story.